She's 21. A young black woman in a sharp, tailored suit. She steps into the marble lobby of a luxury hotel, but the air changes. Eyes turn. Smirks appear. Someone laughs under their breath. "You don't belong here," a voice sneers. Security moves in. Another whispers, "She's probably on drugs." The police are called. But here's what no one in that room knows. She owns the building. All of it. And in the next 5 minutes she's going to fire every single one of them and send a shockwave through America that will change how young black entrepreneurs are treated forever. Look, I know this sounds impossible. I know you're thinking, there's no way this really happened. But I promise you what I'm about to share with you is 100% true, and it's going to make you feel every emotion possible. You're going to be angry, you're going to be heartbroken, and then you're going to cheer louder than you've ever cheered in your life. This is the story of Aaliyah Brooks, a woman who was told she didn't belong, who was judged solely by the color of her skin, but who turned out to be one of the most powerful people in that entire room. What happened on that rainy Friday evening didn't just send shockwaves through the hospitality industry, it sparked a movement that's still changing corporate America today. A young black woman approaching the gleaming entrance of New York's most exclusive hotel. The doorman barely glances at her as she walks past in her Stanford University hoodie and worn Nike sneakers. To everyone around her, she looks like any other woman, maybe lost, definitely in the wrong place. But what they don't know is that this girl owns not just the room she's trying to check into, not just the floor, but the entire multi-million-dollar property. Aaliyah Brooks wasn't your typical 21-year-old. While most people her age were finishing college and worrying about entry-level jobs, she was closing million-dollar deals and managing a business empire that most adults could only dream of. Her journey began in tragedy when she lost both parents in a car accident at age 10, leaving her to live with her grandmother in a cramped Oakland apartment. That devastating loss could have broken her, but instead, it forged her into something extraordinary. At 12 years old, while other kids were playing video games, Aaliyah taught herself advanced programming and complex algorithms. She noticed how her grandmother struggled to find affordable, quality accommodations when they traveled, and she identified a massive gap in the hospitality market. Hotels were either too expensive or poorly managed. There had to be a middle ground where technology could make luxury both accessible and efficient. She spent 2 years developing revolutionary hotel management software called HotelFlow that could predict guest preferences, optimize room pricing in real time, and reduce operational costs by 40%. This wasn't just booking software, it was artificial intelligence that learned from every interaction, every review, every complaint, creating a constantly evolving system that could anticipate and solve problems before they happened. At 14, she walked into a Silicon Valley venture capital firm. The receptionist almost didn't let her pass the lobby, assuming she was someone's daughter on Take Your Kid to Work day. But when she finally got in front of the investors and opened her laptop, the room went completely silent. Her presentation was flawless, her numbers were bulletproof, and her vision was revolutionary. By the time she walked out, she had secured $2.5 million in seed funding. But Aaliyah didn't stop there. She knew that to truly revolutionize the hospitality industry, she needed to control every aspect of the guest experience. So she took her software profits and made a bold move. She bought her first hotel. The Grandview Inn was a failing property in downtown San Francisco, hemorrhaging money and on the verge of bankruptcy. The previous owners practically laughed when a 14-year-old company made an offer. They stopped laughing when her check cleared. Within 6 months, the Grandview Inn was completely transformed. Aaliyah implemented her software, retrained the staff, and renovated every room with a perfect blend of luxury and cutting-edge technology. Smart mirrors in the bathrooms, AI-controlled climate systems that learned guest preferences, beds that adjusted firmness based on individual sleep patterns. The hotel went from a 2-star disaster to a 5-star destination that travel bloggers called the future of hospitality. By her 21st birthday, Brooks Ventures had expanded to own 12 luxury properties across the country. The Sapphire Crown hotels became synonymous with innovation and elegance, each property worth millions and representing a new philosophy in hospitality where technology and human service worked in perfect harmony. She had also branched into other ventures. A travel app using AI to plan perfect vacations, a chain of co-working spaces, and even a line of smart luggage that could never get lost. Her net worth had crossed $100 million, making her one of the youngest self-made millionaires in history. Forbes featured her on their cover, Time magazine named her one of the most influential young people in the world, and she regularly met with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies who wanted to learn from her innovative approaches. But success as a young black woman came with constant challenges. She had to fight for respect in every boardroom, with people making assumptions about her competence based on her race. Competitors spread rumors that she was just a figurehead, that white executives were really running her company behind the scenes. She had to work twice as hard to prove that being a young black woman wasn't a handicap but gave her a unique perspective in a stagnant industry. She developed a routine of visiting her properties unannounced, always in disguise, always testing the service quality. She believed that the true test of a hotel wasn't how they treated VIP guests who they knew were important, but how they treated someone who looked like they didn't belong. It was this philosophy that led her to the Sapphire Crown Hotel in New York City on that fateful Friday evening in November. The rain was coming down hard as her Uber pulled up to the gleaming entrance of her flagship property, the crown jewel of her empire where penthouse suites cost $3,000 a night. Walking into that lobby with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, she felt immense pride. Every tile, every light fixture, every piece of art on the walls, she had chosen them all, had overseen every detail of the renovation that transformed this place from a dated business hotel into a world-class destination. The lobby was buzzing with well-dressed guests, business travelers in expensive suits, and couples heading to the award-winning rooftop restaurant. And then she approached the front desk, where everything was about to change forever. The woman behind the reception desk was Margaret Henderson, 52 years old with 25 years of hotel experience. She considered herself an expert at sizing up guests the moment they walked through the door. When she saw Aaliyah approaching young, black, dressed in casual clothes, her internal assessment was immediate and dismissive. This girl was clearly lost, probably looking for directions, and definitely couldn't afford to stay at such an exclusive establishment. Aaliyah walked up to the desk with the quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she had accomplished. She smiled politely, the same professional smile she used in board meetings when closing multi-million-dollar deals. "Good evening. I have a reservation for tonight. The name is Aaliyah Johnson." She used her middle name and grandmother's maiden name for these anonymous visits. Margaret didn't even look at her computer screen for more than 2 seconds. Her fingers barely touched the keyboard in a transparent performance of checking that was clearly fake and insulting. She looked up with a condescending smile reserved for people she was about to disappoint but didn't really care about. "I'm sorry, but I think you're mistaken. We don't have any reservations under that name." Aaliyah's expression remained calm and professional. She had dealt with discrimination before, though never in one of her own properties. "Could you check again, please? It's spelled Aaliyah Johnson. The reservation was made 3 days ago for the penthouse suite." Margaret's eyebrows shot up, and she actually laughed, a short, dismissive sound that carried across the marble lobby like a gunshot. Other guests began turning to watch the unfolding scene. "The penthouse suite? Miss, that room is $5,000 a night. It's reserved for our VIP guests, executives, celebrities, people of substance. Perhaps you're thinking of a different hotel? There's a Holiday Inn about 6 blocks away that might be more suitable for someone like you." The words hung in the air like a challenge. A well-dressed white couple nearby stopped their conversation to watch and smirk. A businessman looked up from his laptop with a mixture of curiosity and second-hand embarrassment. The entire lobby was becoming an unwilling audience to this display of discrimination. Aaliyah felt the familiar fire building in her chest, not the hot rage of emotion, but the cold, calculated anger of someone who had been underestimated far too many times. She pulled out her phone, opened her banking app, and showed the crystal-clear confirmation of payment. "The reservation is paid in full. 3 nights, $15,000 plus taxes and fees. The confirmation number is SC NYC 4821. Would you like to check your system again?" Margaret glanced at the phone with obvious skepticism and made a statement that would soon cost her everything. Anyone can fake a screenshot these days, young lady. I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but this hotel maintains certain standards. We can't just let anyone walk in here claiming they have reservations for our most expensive suites. It's a matter of security, you understand? Security reasons, Aaliyah repeated slowly, her voice dropping to a dangerous temperature. And what exactly about me presents a security risk? Margaret's face flushed slightly, but she doubled down on her position. Look, I've been in this business for 25 years. I know our clientele, and you're simply not it. This is a professional establishment serving successful individuals. We have a reputation to maintain. That's when the assistant manager, Trevor, decided to make the situation infinitely worse. He was maybe 28 years old with slicked back hair and an expensive suit, the type of person who had gotten his position through connections rather than competence. He approached with barely concealed disdain written across his face. Is there a problem here, Margaret? This young lady claims she has a reservation for the penthouse suite, Margaret replied, her tone making it abundantly clear how ridiculous she found the entire situation. Trevor didn't even acknowledge Aaliyah's presence directly. Instead, he spoke to Margaret as if the woman standing right in front of them was completely invisible. Obviously some kind of mistake or prank. You know how these kids are today with their internet scams and social media challenges. Should I call security to escort her out? I'm standing right here, Aaliyah said firmly, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority she typically reserved for boardroom negotiations. And I'm a confirmed guest with a valid reservation. I strongly suggest you check your system properly before you make a mistake you'll deeply regret. Trevor finally looked directly at her, and his smile was so patronizing it could have frozen water. Listen, young lady, I don't know what YouTube video or TikTok trend convinced you to come here and pretend to be wealthy, but this isn't some kind of game. This is a serious place of business where real successful people who have actually accomplished something meaningful in their lives, come to stay. Not children playing elaborate dress-up games. The couple that had been watching actually began applauding slow, mocking claps that made several other guests chuckle and pull out their phones to record what they assumed would be an embarrassing moment for the woman. Someone was already composing a caption about a delusional kid trying to scam her way into a luxury hotel. But they had absolutely no idea who they were dealing with. Aaliyah's mind was already working 3 steps ahead. She opened her secure company application that gave her real-time access to every aspect of her business empire. She could see herself standing in the lobby through the hotel's own security cameras. She pulled up the Sapphire Crown Hotel's complete financial records, detailed staffing charts, and comprehensive employee files. Margaret's record showed 3 formal warnings for rudeness to guests in the past year alone, somehow still employed despite HR recommendations for termination. Trevor's history was even worse, multiple discrimination complaints that had been swept under the rug, including a DUI charge that should have disqualified him from any management position. Let me be absolutely clear about something, Aaliyah said, her voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze fire. I have a confirmed reservation with full payment verification. You are refusing me service based solely on my appearance, my age, and my race. Is that completely accurate? We're refusing to participate in whatever elaborate scam you're attempting to pull, Trevor responded with increasing arrogance. Now I'm going to ask you politely one final time to leave these premises. Don't force me to call security to escort you out. That would be genuinely embarrassing for you. Aaliyah smiled then, not a warm, friendly expression, but the kind of smile she wore when she was about to acquire a competitor's entire company for pennies on the dollar. She pulled up her contacts and sent a single, urgent text message to her executive assistant Marcus. Lobby. Emergency protocols. Now. You know what? You're absolutely right about one thing, she said calmly, taking a seat in one of the lobby's plush leather chairs. This is going to be embarrassing. But not for me. I'll wait right here for exactly 5 minutes. Margaret and Trevor exchanged confused glances, clearly convinced she was having some kind of delusional break from reality. Trevor actually laughed out loud. Sure, sweetheart. You just wait there for your imaginary backup team. But in 5 minutes, when absolutely nobody shows up to rescue you, you're leaving these premises, either voluntarily or with security's direct assistance. If you're as outraged as I am by this blatant discrimination, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because what happens in the next 5 minutes will absolutely blow your mind. We're about to witness the most satisfying moment of justice in corporate history, and you don't want to miss a single second of what's coming next. The lobby had essentially become a live theater performance. Guests were openly staring now, some clearly amused by what they perceived as woman delusion, others feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the obvious discrimination on display, but all waiting to see how this unprecedented situation would resolve itself. The couple that had mocked her earlier moved closer to get a better view, with the woman saying loudly enough for everyone to hear, "This is what happens when people don't understand their proper place in society. She's probably on drugs or something, look at how she's acting. Someone like that definitely doesn't belong here." The husband chuckled and added, "Should we call the police? She seems unstable." The suggestion sent ripples of cruel laughter through the growing crowd of onlookers. Other guests began pulling out their phones, not just to record, but some actually started dialing 911. A businessman in an expensive suit called out, "Yeah, call the cops. Get this delusional kid out of here before she causes real trouble." Margaret's confidence grew with the crowd's support. "You know what? That's exactly what we should do. Trevor, call the police. Tell them we have a disturbed individual who's refusing to leave and making wild claims. She's clearly having some kind of breakdown." Trevor nodded enthusiastically and reached for the desk phone. "Absolutely. This has gone on long enough. Hello, 911? We need police assistance at the Sapphire Crown Hotel. We have a young black female who's trespassing, making false claims, and appears to be under the influence of something. She's becoming increasingly agitated and we're concerned for our guests' safety." The lobby erupted in approving murmurs and more laughter. Someone shouted, "Finally! Someone doing something about this nonsense." Another guest added, "Kids today think they can just do whatever they want." Aaliyah remained perfectly calm despite the escalating hostility around her. She could hear the sirens already approaching in the distance. The police were clearly taking this emergency call seriously. The crowd's laughter grew louder and more vicious. Someone was live streaming the entire scene, providing running commentary. "This crazy girl thinks she owns this place. The cops are coming to drag her out. You know what the beautiful irony is?" Aaliyah said quietly, just loud enough for the immediate crowd to hear. "Those police officers you just called? They're about to arrest you for filing a false police report and harassment. And those phones you're using to record my supposed humiliation? They're about to capture the most expensive mistake of your entire lives." The crowd laughed even harder. Margaret was practically giddy with vindication. "Oh, sweetie, the only person getting arrested tonight is you. For trespassing, disturbing the peace, and whatever drugs you're obviously on." That's when Marcus Chen burst through the doors. Marcus Chen had been Aaliyah's executive assistant for 2 years, hired when she was 14, and he was fresh out of Harvard Business School with top honors. Initially skeptical about working for a woman, he quickly realized he was serving one of the most brilliant business minds of any generation. He had learned never to question her instincts and to always be prepared for absolutely anything. When he received her emergency text, he was at an upscale restaurant 3 blocks away having dinner with his wife. The moment he saw emergency protocols, he was on his feet, grabbing the secure briefcase he always carried, containing legal documents, ownership papers, employment contracts, and termination templates for all Brooks Ventures properties. His wife didn't even question the sudden departure. She understood that when Aaliyah called, it was always serious business. He made it to the Sapphire Crown Hotel in exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds, his tailored suit slightly damp from the heavy rain, briefcase in one hand and tablet in the other. The moment he walked through those gleaming doors, he could feel the electric tension crackling through the lobby. He immediately spotted the crowd of guests watching something unfold, saw hotel security moving toward a young black girl in a hoodie, and realized his boss was at the center of whatever was happening. "Ms. Brooks?" he called out clearly, his voice cutting through the lobby chatter like a perfectly sharpened blade. Every single head in the lobby turned simultaneously. Margaret's face went completely pale. Trevor's confident smirk crumbled instantly. Aaliyah stood up slowly, adjusting her hoodie with deliberate, calculated calm. Marcus. Perfect timing as always. Do you have all the necessary documents? Everything you could possibly need, Ms. Brooks. He opened the briefcase directly on the reception desk with practiced efficiency, spreading out papers like a lawyer preparing for trial. Employment contracts, property ownership deeds, comprehensive financial records, and termination templates. Everything required for immediate action. The silence in the lobby was absolutely deafening. The police sirens were getting closer. Someone's phone clattered to the marble floor, the sound echoing like thunder in the sudden quiet. The crowd that had been laughing and mocking just moments before now stood frozen in absolute terror. Margaret was the first to find her voice, though it was shaking uncontrollably. Brooks? As in, Brooks Ventures? But we called the police. We said you were? On drugs? Trespassing? Disturbed and dangerous? Aaliyah's voice was deadly calm. Yes, I heard every single word. Marcus, I need you to add filing false police reports and defamation to our legal case. Also, contact our attorneys immediately. We're looking at a massive civil rights lawsuit against not just the employees, but every guest who participated in this harassment. The police officers entered the lobby just as Marcus was spreading legal documents across the reception desk. They looked around confused, clearly expecting to find some kind of disturbance, but instead found a well-dressed businessman and a calm woman surrounded by very scared-looking people. Margaret was the first to find her voice, though it was shaking uncontrollably. Brooks? As in, Brooks Ventures? You're saying you're actually... Officers, Aaliyah addressed the police with professional courtesy. I'm Aaliyah Brooks, CEO and owner of this hotel. These individuals called in a false police report claiming I was trespassing and under the influence of drugs. As you can see from the legal documents my assistant is displaying, I own this property. What you've walked into is a case of severe racial discrimination, harassment, and filing false police reports against a minor. One of the officers, a veteran with 20 years of experience, immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. Ma'am, are you saying these people knowingly filed a false report? Not just knowingly, officer, but maliciously. They accused a black woman of being on drugs and called me disturbed and dangerous, simply because I was trying to check into my own hotel. Multiple witnesses here can confirm they were laughing about calling the police to have me arrested for the crime of existing while black and young. The crowd that had been so confident and mocking was now desperately trying to back away and disappear. The couple who had suggested calling the police looked absolutely terrified. The businessman who had enthusiastically supported the 911 call was frantically trying to delete his live stream. Trevor desperately tried to salvage the rapidly deteriorating situation, his face cycling through emotions like a broken slot machine: disbelief, terror, desperate bargaining. Ms. Brooks, there must be some terrible misunderstanding here. We had absolutely no idea who you were. You have to understand our position. You look so young and the way you're dressed. Stop talking immediately, Aaliyah commanded, holding up one hand with absolute authority. You just confessed to denying me service based entirely on my appearance, my age, and my race. Do you have any comprehension of how many federal and state laws you've just admitted to violating on camera? She turned to Marcus with businesslike efficiency. Pull up the complete security footage from the last 20 minutes. I want every second of this interaction documented and preserved. Marcus's fingers moved across his tablet with lightning speed. Within seconds, the lobby's main display screen, typically showing artistic videos of the city, switched to live security footage. There was Margaret, dismissively refusing to check her computer. There was Trevor, suggesting Aaliyah was running some kind of internet scam. There was the mocking couple, applauding her humiliation. Let me explain exactly what's about to happen, Aaliyah announced, addressing not just Margaret and Trevor, but the entire lobby full of stunned witnesses. Every single employee currently on duty is terminated immediately. Not tomorrow morning. Not after some meaningless review process. Right now, this instant. Shocked gasps rippled through the crowd like waves. The housekeeping supervisor who had just entered the lobby froze mid-step. The bartender who had come to investigate the commotion went completely white. The security guard who had been potentially preparing to escort Aaliyah out began backing away from the scene. "Ms. Brooks, please, I'm begging you," Margaret was crying now, genuine tears streaming down her face. "I have 3 children at home. I desperately need this job. I'm so incredibly sorry. Please forgive me." "You're sorry you got caught," Aaliyah corrected with surgical precision. "How many other young black people have you turned away from this establishment? How many paying guests have you humiliated and dismissed because you decided you knew better than our reservation system? How many people have you discriminated against because they didn't look wealthy enough to meet your personal standards?" She pulled up Margaret's complete employment file on Marcus's tablet for everyone to see. 3 formal complaints in just the last 12 months. All from guests reporting that you were dismissive and unprofessionally rude. All from people who happened to be minorities. Human Resources recommended immediate termination 6 months ago, but management chose to override that recommendation. Trevor made one final, desperate attempt to save the situation. "Ms. Brooks, I accept complete responsibility for this failure. It was entirely my fault as the manager on duty. Please, I'm begging you to let the rest of the staff keep their positions. Fire me if you must, but spare them." "Oh, you're definitely being terminated," Aaliyah replied with ice-cold certainty. "But so is every other employee who stood by silently and watched this discrimination happen. The concierge who said nothing while witnessing obvious racism. The bellhop who actually smirked at my humiliation. Every single person who was complicit in this disgraceful behavior." She turned to address the security guard directly. "Contact our emergency staffing agency immediately. We have an exclusive contract with them for exactly these types of situations. I want a complete replacement crew here within 1 hour." The guard, technically already terminated, stood frozen, unsure whether to follow orders from someone who had just fired him. Aaliyah made the decision simple. "Actually, Marcus, you handle that call. Mr. Johnson is no longer a Brooks Ventures employee." The crowd in the lobby was absolutely stunned into silence. Some guests were still recording, others were whispering among themselves in shock. The couple that had mocked Aaliyah earlier were attempting to slowly back away toward the elevators, hoping to escape unnoticed. "Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Davidson," Aaliyah called out to them with perfect clarity. "Jennifer and Robert Davidson, currently occupying room 412. You're checking out tonight." The woman sputtered in outrage. "You can't do that to us. We're paying guests with confirmed reservations. We have a week-long stay booked and paid for. Your reservations have been canceled effective immediately. You'll receive full refunds, naturally. But you are no longer welcome at any Sapphire Crown property anywhere in the world. Lifetime ban." Aaliyah's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "You found it amusing to mock a woman trying to check into her own hotel. Let's see how entertaining you find being permanently blacklisted from 12 of the country's most prestigious luxury properties." Marcus was already processing their immediate checkout on his tablet, their electronic key cards deactivating in real time as he worked with ruthless efficiency. Within exactly 20 minutes, the entire lobby was completely transformed. The previous staff was packing their personal belongings under the watchful supervision of the new security team Marcus had summoned. The emergency staffing agency had dispatched their absolute best professionals, experts who specialized in stepping into crisis situations and maintaining seamless operations. The new front desk manager was an experienced black woman named Patricia who was already at the computer system, personally checking in guests who had been waiting during the unprecedented situation. Her decades of experience in luxury hospitality was immediately apparent in her professional demeanor and efficient service. Aaliyah stood in the center of the transformed lobby, no longer the dismissed woman in a hoodie, but the powerful CEO that everyone now clearly recognized her to be. She addressed the remaining guests, those who hadn't participated in the mockery and discrimination. "I sincerely apologize for the disruption to your evening and your stay with us. The The Sapphire Crown hotels have always stood for luxury, innovation, and above all else, unwavering respect for every human being. Every single guest who walks through our doors deserves to be treated with complete dignity, regardless of their appearance, their age, their race, or any other factor. Tonight, that fundamental standard was violated in the most egregious way possible. It has been corrected immediately and permanently. She looked directly at one of the phones still recording the historic moment. To anyone watching this who thinks they can judge another person's worth by their appearance, let tonight serve as an unforgettable lesson. You never know who you're really talking to. You never know whose life you're affecting with your prejudice. And you never know when your discrimination will cost you absolutely everything you thought was secure. If you believe Aaliyah handled this situation exactly like the powerful leader she is, smash that subscribe button right now and share this video with everyone who needs to see what real justice looks like. We're about to explore how this single night changed the entire hospitality industry forever and inspired a generation of young entrepreneurs to never accept discrimination. By 11 o'clock that night, professionally recorded video of the incident had gone explosively viral across every social media platform imaginable. A guest had posted it with the caption, "Teen CEO fires entire hotel staff for discrimination, must watch." Within 3 hours, it had accumulated over 1 million views. By sunrise, it was the #1 trending topic worldwide. Major news outlets immediately picked up the story. CNN's headline read, "Youngest hotel mogul takes historic stand against discrimination." Fox Business ran a detailed segment called, "The 5-Minute Firing: How One Teen CEO Changed Corporate America Forever." The BBC featured it as their international lead story. American teen billionaire fires entire staff in dramatic anti-discrimination stand. The real firestorm was happening online across all platforms. The video was everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook. People were analyzing and dissecting every single second. Margaret's dismissive laugh became an instant meme. Trevor's arrogant line about people who have actually accomplished something was turned into a viral TikTok sound, with thousands of successful young entrepreneurs using it ironically to showcase their impressive achievements. Aaliyah woke up the next morning in the penthouse suite she had rightfully earned to find Marcus waiting with a tablet overflowing with interview requests. Good Morning America, The Today Show, 60 Minutes, Ellen, Oprah, The View, everyone in the media wanted to speak with her immediately. Her personal phone had received over 10,000 messages overnight. Her company's social media accounts had gained 3 million new followers in less than 12 hours. However, not all the attention was positive or supportive. The terminated employees had quickly banded together, hiring an expensive lawyer to sue for wrongful termination. They claimed Aaliyah had dramatically overreacted, that it was simply a misunderstanding blown completely out of proportion by an impulsive woman. Margaret appeared on local news stations with tears streaming down her face, talking about being a struggling single mother who had made one small mistake and lost everything as a result. The public response was intensely divided. Competing hashtags battled for social media dominance. Team Aaliyah versus Team Margaret. Supporters said Aaliyah was a hero taking a courageous stand against systemic discrimination. Critics argued she was a privileged rich kid who had destroyed working-class people's lives over a momentary lapse in professional judgment. Aaliyah decided to address the controversy head-on. She agreed to give one exclusive interview with Gayle King on CBS This Morning. She wore a simple but elegant black business suit with her hair in a professional style, looking every inch the accomplished CEO despite her youth. Gayle didn't pull any punches during the interview. "Aaliyah, critics are saying you severely overreacted to this situation. That you could have used this as a valuable teaching moment instead of destroying multiple people's livelihoods. How do you respond to that criticism?" Aaliyah's response was measured but absolutely firm. "Gayle, this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or an isolated incident. I personally reviewed all the employee records." Margaret had multiple documented complaints for identical discriminatory behavior. Trevor had an established pattern of discrimination that was thoroughly documented but deliberately ignored by previous management. This was systemic institutional racism that was being enabled by a toxic culture that said it was acceptable to judge people by their appearance. But firing everyone, even employees who weren't directly involved in the discrimination? Everyone in that lobby was involved. Gail. They watched discrimination happen. Some of them laughed and mocked. Others did absolutely nothing to intervene. In my hotels, discrimination isn't just about what you actively do, it's equally about what you allow to happen when you have the power to stop it. If you witness a guest being humiliated and you choose to stay silent, you're complicit in that discrimination. Gail leaned forward with genuine curiosity. You're only 16 years old. Some people are questioning whether you have sufficient life experience to make such drastic, life-changing decisions. Aaliyah's slight smile carried years of proven success. Those exact same people said I was too young to start a technology company at 14. Too young to revolutionize hotel management software at 12. Too young to be taken seriously in any corporate boardroom. Yet here I am, successfully running a $100 million business empire. Age doesn't automatically determine wisdom or judgment. Actions and results do. The thoughtful interview significantly shifted public opinion and media narrative. Suddenly, major corporations were reaching out to Aaliyah for consulting on their diversity and inclusion policies. 3 different Fortune 500 companies offered her board positions. Universities wanted her to develop a curriculum on ethical business practices and leadership. The real transformation came from within the hospitality industry itself. The Sapphire Crown Hotels became the first major chain to implement what Aaliyah called the Dignity Protocol. Every employee, from housekeeping to senior management, underwent intensive training on unconscious bias and discrimination prevention. Transparent monitoring systems were installed that guests could access to report discrimination in real time. A zero-tolerance policy was enacted. Any employee who discriminated against any guest was terminated immediately with no exceptions or appeals. The financial impact was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Bookings at Sapphire Crown hotels increased by 300% within weeks. The hotels became powerful symbols of progressive values and truly inclusive luxury. Young entrepreneurs, technology leaders, and diverse travelers specifically chose Sapphire Crown properties because they knew they would be treated with respect regardless of their appearance, age, or background. Other major hotel chains scrambled to implement similar policies. Hilton announced a comprehensive review of their discrimination policies and procedures. Marriott launched a diversity task force with significant resources. The Ritz-Carlton created an entirely new executive position, Chief Inclusion Officer, and attempted to recruit Patricia, the emergency manager who had stepped in that night, to fill the role. She politely declined, choosing to remain with Aaliyah's company where she was promoted to Regional Director of Operations. The terminated employee's lawsuit collapsed spectacularly when Marcus's legal team presented overwhelming evidence of past complaints and documented discriminatory behavior. Several former guests courageously came forward with their own stories of being turned away or treated poorly by the same staff members. Margaret and Trevor, facing potential criminal charges for civil rights violations, dropped their lawsuit and settled out of court. The story took an unexpected and deeply moving turn 3 months later when Aaliyah received a handwritten letter from Margaret's 15-year-old daughter, Sophia. She wrote about her initial anger at Aaliyah for destroying her family's financial security, but then something remarkable: "My mother was wrong, and I've watched that video 100 times now. Each viewing makes it clearer. She judged you the same way people have judged our family our whole lives. We're white but poor. And I've seen how people look at our old car, our small apartment, my mom's knockoff designer purse. She became the very thing that had hurt her so many times. You didn't ruin my mother's life, you showed her who she had become, and maybe saved her from becoming something worse. She's in therapy now, really examining herself for the first time. I wanted to hate you, but instead you've inspired me. I'm starting my own app that helps women find discrimination-free businesses. You proved that age doesn't define capability. Thank you for standing up when it was hard." Aaliyah had that letter professionally framed in her office. She also quietly funded Margaret's therapy sessions and created a rehabilitation program for terminated employees who demonstrated genuine remorse and personal growth, offering them positions with other companies after extensive retraining and education. 6 months after the incident, Aaliyah was invited to speak at the United Nations Youth Summit in New York. She stood before representatives from 193 countries as the youngest speaker in the summit's distinguished history. Her speech was simple but profoundly powerful. I'm often asked if I regret what happened that night, if I could handle the situation differently. My answer is always the same: I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret living in a world where a 16-year-old has to fire an entire hotel staff to make a basic point about human dignity. But I absolutely don't regret taking a stand. Because sometimes, the cost of silence is greater than the cost of action. Sometimes, you have to be willing to shake the foundation completely to rebuild something better and more just. The speech received a sustained 5-minute standing ovation from world leaders and diplomats. More importantly, it led to the creation of the Brooks Foundation, a non-profit organization providing funding and mentorship to young entrepreneurs from marginalized communities. Within its first year, the foundation had helped launch over 100 businesses, each built on the principle that respect and dignity were non-negotiable values. The Sapphire Crown Hotel in New York became a genuine landmark and pilgrimage site. Business schools brought students to study the 5-minute firing as a masterclass in crisis management and ethical leadership. The lobby where everything happened was renamed the Dignity Lounge, with a bronze plaque reading, "On this spot, November 15, 2024, a 16-year-old CEO proved that respect has no age, no color, and no price tag." Aaliyah continued expanding her business empire into international markets while maintaining her commitment to equality and justice. By her 18th birthday, Brooks Ventures was valued at over $1 billion, making her the youngest person ever featured on Forbes' Billionaires issue. But when journalists asked about her proudest achievement, she never mentioned money, magazines, or awards. "My proudest moment," she would consistently say, "was standing in that lobby, being dismissed and discriminated against, and having both the power and the courage to do something meaningful about it." Not everyone has that kind of power or platform. That's exactly why I use mine. For everyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong anywhere. The ripple effects of that single night continued for years across industries and continents. Hotels worldwide adopted similar anti-discrimination policies. Business schools created entire graduate courses on the Brooks model of inclusive leadership and ethical business practices. Young entrepreneurs from every background cited her as their primary inspiration for starting companies that prioritized human dignity and respect alongside profit and growth. Perhaps the most significant change was in countless small, daily interactions. Front desk clerks who thought twice before making assumptions about guests. Managers who listened carefully instead of dismissing concerns. Customers who spoke up when they witnessed discrimination against others. The 5-minute firing had evolved from a viral moment into a global movement for justice and equality. Aaliyah Brooks, the 16-year-old in a hoodie who had been denied entry to her own hotel, had become much more than a successful CEO. She has become a powerful symbol of what happens when young people refuse to accept the discriminatory status quo, when they demand better not just for themselves but for everyone who comes after them. As she frequently said in interviews and speeches, "They thought I was just some kid who didn't belong in their exclusive world. They were partially right, I was a kid. But I belonged there more than anyone else in that entire building. Because I didn't just own the hotel, I owned the vision of what it could become. And that vision absolutely didn't include discrimination, no matter how well-dressed or well-connected it appeared." The night that began with discrimination and dismissal had ended with justice, transformation, and hope for a more equitable future. And it all happened because one remarkable woman refused to accept that her age, race, or appearance determined her worth or her power to create change in the world.